After paying for an elderly man's gas, the manager fires her 2 hours later. Everyone was excited. The morning was cold and grey when Sarah arrived at the gas station to start her shift. The smell of fuel and the constant coming and going of vehicles were already part of her daily routine. At 35 years old, Sarah had been working in that place for over a decade. Although the job wasn't glamorous, it allowed her to support her teenage daughter Lucy and help her mother Isabella with medical expenses. As she adjusted her blue uniform with the gas station logo, Sarah observed through the window how the clouds threatened to unleash a storm at any moment. Her shift co-workers, Carl and Martha, were already at their posts ready for another day of work. "Good morning," Sarah greeted with a tired but sincere smile. Carl, a middle-aged man with a perpetual frown, barely grunted in response. Martha, younger and more energetic, returned the greeting enthusiastically. "Hi, Sarah, ready for another exciting day in fuel paradise?" Martha joked. Sarah laughed softly. "As ready as ever. Any news?" "Nothing new," Martha replied, although the boss mentioned he'll be coming later for a surprise inspection. Sarah felt a twinge of worry. Surprise inspections always made her nervous, even though she knew she did her job well. With a sigh, she headed to her post at the cash register. The hours passed with the usual monotony, customers coming and going, the tinkle of the bell every time the door opened, the constant hum of the gas pumps. Sarah attended to each customer with a friendly smile despite the fatigue she felt. It was near noon when everything changed. The bell rang once more and Sarah looked up to see an elderly man enter. He walked with slow, uncertain steps, leaning on a cane. His face was furrowed with wrinkles, but his blue eyes shone with a spark of life that contrasted with his fragile appearance. The old man approached the counter, and Sarah noticed he seemed confused and distressed. "Welcome, sir. How can I help you?" Sarah asked kindly. The man looked at her and for a moment seemed lost. Then, as if suddenly remembering why he was there, he spoke with a trembling voice. I've filled up my car's tank, but I can't find my wallet. I don't know where I've put it." His hands trembled as he searched the pockets of his worn jacket. Sarah felt a wave of compassion. "Don't worry, sir. What was the amount for the gas?" "I think it was $50, the old man responded, his voice breaking with embarrassment. "But I can't pay for it. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do." Sarah looked around. Carl was busy with another customer, and Martha had gone on her break. Without thinking twice, Sarah made a decision that would change the course of her life. "Don't worry," she said quietly. "I'll take care of it." The old man looked at her with surprise and gratitude. "But how? I can't accept that." Sarah smiled gently. "I insist we all need help sometimes. What's your name, sir?" "Luke," the old man replied, tears in his eyes. "My name is Luke." "Well, Luke, I'm Sarah, and don't worry about this. Consider it an act of goodwill." With trembling hands, Sarah took money from her own pocket and registered it in the cash register as if it were a normal payment. Luke watched her, still in disbelief at this stranger's kindness. "I don't know how to thank you, Sarah," Luke said, his voice laden with emotion. "You're an angel." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "It's nothing, really. Just promise me you'll be careful and won't forget your wallet next time." Luke nodded vigorously. "I promise I'll never forget your kindness, Sarah." As the old man slowly walked away towards his car, Sarah felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was satisfied with having helped someone in need. On the other, she knew she had just spent money she really couldn't afford to lose. What Sarah didn't know at that moment was that her act of kindness had been observed. Carl, who had finished with his customer, had seen the whole scene from afar. His frown deepened as he watched Luke leave. "What the hell did you just do, Sarah?" Carl asked, approaching the counter. Sarah started. She hadn't realized Carl was there. I just helped an old man who couldn't pay for his gas." Carl let out a sarcastic laugh. "Help? What you did was give away the company's money. Do you think that old guy wasn't scamming you?" "It wasn't a scam, Carl," Sarah responded, feeling her cheeks flush. "He was a confused older man. I couldn't just leave him like that." "Well, you should have," Carl replied. "It's not our problem if people can't pay. You just violated company policy, you know that, right? Before Sarah could respond, the door opened again and Martha came back from her break. Noticing the tension in the air, she looked from Carl to Sarah. What did I miss? Carl wasted no time in telling her what happened, painting Sarah's action as a serious fault. Martha listened with increasingly wide eyes. Sarah, is it true? Martha asked incredulously. You paid for a customer's gas with your own money? Sarah nodded, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. Yes, I did. He was an old man who had forgotten his wallet. I couldn't just leave him stranded. Martha shook her head. Oh, Sarah, you have a heart of gold. But this could get you in trouble. What if the boss finds out? The boss will find out, Carl growled. I'll make sure of it. We can't allow people to take advantage of us. Sarah felt panic beginning to take hold of her. Please, Carl, there's no need to involve the boss. It won't happen again. But Carl had already taken out his phone and was dialing a number. Sorry, Sarah, but it's my duty to report this. As Carl spoke on the phone, Sarah leaned on the counter, feeling the world crashing down around her. How had she gone from doing what she believed was right to being on the verge of losing her job? Martha approached and put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know your intentions were good, but rules are rules. Sarah nodded silently, her mind spinning. She thought of Luke, of her mother Isabella, of the bills she had to pay. What would she do if she lost this job? The rest of the day passed in a haze of anxiety for Sarah. Every time the doorbell rang, she feared it was the boss arriving to fire her. Carl looked at her with disapproval every time their paths crossed, while Martha tried to cheer her up with awkward smiles. When it was finally time to close, Sarah was emotionally and physically exhausted. She took off her uniform with mechanical movements, wishing she could erase the day's events. Sarah, Martha called, just as she was about to leave. The boss called. He wants to see you first thing tomorrow in his office. Sarah felt the floor move beneath her feet. She nodded weakly and walked out into the cold night, wondering how a simple act of kindness could have unleashed such chaos in her life. As she walked to the bus stop, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Luke, the old man she had helped. Had he made it home okay? Was he all right? For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine that maybe, somehow, this act of kindness would have a positive impact on her life. But as the bus approached her stop, reality hit her hard. Tomorrow, she could lose her job, and with it, the stability she had worked so hard to build for her family. With a heavy heart, Sarah boarded the bus, not knowing that her life was about to take an unexpected turn. The next morning dawned grey and rainy, as if the weather wanted to reflect Sarah's mood. She got up early, long before her alarm went off, after a night of restless sleep and nightmares about losing her job. In the kitchen, she found her daughter Lucy already awake, preparing breakfast. At 16, Lucy was a responsible and mature teenager, aware of the sacrifices her mother made for her. Good morning, Mom, Lucy greeted, immediately noticing her mother's worried expression. Are you okay? You look pale. Sarah tried to smile, but the gesture didn't reach her eyes. I'm fine, honey. Just a little tired. Lucy didn't believe her for a second. Mom, I know you. Something's worrying you. What's going on? Sarah sighed, sitting at the kitchen table. She knew she couldn't hide the truth from her daughter, not when the consequences could affect the whole family. Something happened at work yesterday, Sarah began. I helped a customer who couldn't pay for his gas. I paid with my own money. Lucy's eyes widened in surprise. But Mom, that was very kind of you. Why does it seem like it's something bad? Because it goes against company policies, Sarah explained. And now the boss wants to see me. This morning I'm afraid I might lose my job. Lucy dropped the spatula she was holding, the metallic sound resonating in the small kitchen. What? But that's not fair. You were just being a good person. I know, honey, Sarah replied, feeling a lump form in her throat. But sometimes good intentions aren't enough. Lucy approached and hugged her mother tightly. Everything will be okay, Mum. It has to be okay. You're the best person I know. Sarah hugged her daughter, grateful for her support. At that moment, they heard footsteps approaching, and the kitchen door opened, revealing Isabella, Sarah's mother. Isabella, A 65-year-old woman with silver hair and the same warm eyes as Sarah entered the kitchen leaning on her cane. Despite her health problems, Isabella had always been a pillar of strength for her family. "Good morning, my loves," Isabella greeted. But her smile faded when she saw the serious expressions of her daughter and granddaughter. "What's going on? You look like you're at a funeral," Sarah told her. Mother, what had happened while Lucy silently finished preparing breakfast. Isabella listened attentively, her face changing from concern to indignation. "How absurd!" Isabella exclaimed when Sarah finished her story. "Firing someone for showing compassion? What kind of world do we live in? One where rules sometimes take precedence over humanity," Sarah replied bitterly. "Listen to me, Sarah," Isabella said, taking her daughter's hands in hers. "Whatever happens today, remember that you did the right thing. And if that boss of yours can't see that, then he doesn't deserve to have you as an employee." Sarah smiled weakly, grateful for her family's support. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you two." They had breakfast together, trying to maintain light conversation, despite the tension hanging in the air. When it was time for Sarah to leave, both Lucy and Isabella hugged her tightly. "Good luck, Mom," Lucy said. "We'll be thinking of you." "Show them what you're made of, my girl," Isabella added. "And remember, no matter what happens, we'll be here for you." With her heart a little lighter thanks to her family's support, Sarah headed to the gas station. The rain had subsided, but the sky remained grey and threatening, as if reflecting the uncertainty she felt. When she arrived, she saw that the boss's car was already parked in front of the office. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves, and went in. The boss, Arnold Vega, was a man in his 50s, with greying hair and a perpetually serious expression. He was sitting behind his desk when Sarah entered the small office. "Good morning, Sarah," Arnold said, his voice neutral. "Please sit down." Sarah sat down, her hands clasped in her lap to hide their trembling. "Good morning, Mr. Vega." Arnold looked at her intently for a moment before speaking. "Sarah, I've been informed of an incident that occurred yesterday. Can you tell me your version of events?" Sarah nodded and began to relate what had happened with Luke, the old man who couldn't pay for his gas. As she spoke, she noticed Arnold's expression softening slightly. When she finished, Arnold sighed deeply. "Sarah, I understand your intentions. I really do. But you must understand that we have policies for a reason." "I know, sir," Sarah responded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "And I assure you it won't happen again." Arnold leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "The problem is that it has already happened, Sarah. And as a manager, I can't ignore a direct violation of our policies." Sarah felt her heart sink. "Mr. Vega, please, this job means everything to me. I have a daughter and a mother who depend on me." "I know, Sarah," Arnold said, and for a moment he seemed truly sorry. "But I have to think about the good of the company. I'm sorry, but you leave me no choice. You're fired." The words fell like a physical blow. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. "Please, Mr. Vega, there must be another solution. I can work extra hours, accept a pay cut, anything." But Arnold shook his head. "My decision is final, Sarah. You can collect your things and leave. You'll receive your last check by mail." With trembling legs, Sarah stood up. She felt as if she were in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She left the office in a daze, barely aware of the pitying looks from her co-workers as she collected her belongings. When she left the gas station for the last time, the rain had started again. Sarah let the drops mix with the tears that now flowed freely down her cheeks. How was she going to tell Lucy and Isabella that she had lost her job? She walked aimlessly for a while, unable to face the idea of going home and delivering the news. Finally, she found herself in a small park near her house. She sat on a wet bench, no longer caring about the cold or the dampness. As she sat there trying to process what had happened, she heard a familiar voice. "Sarah? Is that you?" She looked up and saw Eleanor, her neighbor and friend of many years. Eleanor quickly approached, concerned about the state she found Sarah in. "What happened? Are you okay?" Eleanor asked, sitting next to her and covering her with her umbrella. "Sarah, unable to contain her emotions any longer, broke down crying. Between sobs, she told Elena everything that had happened. Elena listened in silence, gently rubbing Sarah's back in an attempt to comfort her. When Sarah finished her story, Elena spoke with determination. "Listen to me, Sarah. What happened to you is unfair, but it's not the end of the world. You're a strong and capable woman. You'll find another job." "But how?" Sarah asked desperately. "Who's going to hire someone who was fired for helping a customer?" Elena smiled gently. "Someone who values compassion and integrity. And until you find that job, you're not alone. You have friends, you have family. We'll help you." Elena's words were like a balm for Sarah's wounded heart. For the first time since she left Arnold's office, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Elena," Sarah said, wiping away her tears. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "That's what friends are for," Elena replied. "Now let's go to your house. Your family needs you and you need them." Together they walked back to Sarah's house. When they entered, Lucy and Isabella were in the living room, anxiously waiting. Seeing Sarah's face, they immediately knew what had happened. Lucy ran to hug her mother, while Isabella approached as quickly as her cane allowed. "Oh, Mom," Lucy said, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry." "We're with you, my girl," Isabella added, joining. The hug Sarah let herself be enveloped by her family's love, feeling that despite everything, she wasn't alone. Elena watched the scene from the door, with a mixture of sadness and determination on her face. "Sarah," Eleanor said, drawing everyone's attention, "I have an idea. My brother works in human resources at a big company. Let me talk to him. Maybe he can help you find something." Sarah felt grateful. "Thank you, Elena. I don't know how to. Thank you." "You don't have to," Elena replied with a smile. "Just promise me you won't lose hope." As Elena left, promising to return soon with news, Sarah sat down with her family. She told them everything that had happened, from the incident with Luke to her conversation with Arnold. "That man doesn't know what he's lost," Isabella said firmly. "Mom," Lucy said with a determination unusual for her age, "I could leave school and look for a job to help." "Absolutely not," Sarah responded immediately. "Your education is the most important thing. We'll find a way to get through this without you having to sacrifice your future." Despite the uncertainty that loomed over them, the family grew closer than ever. They spent the rest of the day together, making plans, consoling each other, and occasionally even laughing. That night, as Sarah prepared for bed, she looked out the window at the dark, rainy street. She didn't know what the future held for her, but she was determined to face it with the same compassion and strength that had always characterized her. What Sarah couldn't know was that elsewhere in the city, the events she had set in motion with her act of kindness were about to take an unexpected turn that would change her life forever. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions for Sarah and her family. Each morning she would get up with the determination to find a new job, but each night she would return home discouraged and exhausted. Doors seemed to close one after another, and bills began to pile up on the kitchen table like a mountain of worries. Lucy did her best to help, offering to tutor neighborhood kids to earn some extra money. Isabella, for her part, insisted on cutting back on her medications to save money, which Sarah adamantly refused. "Your health comes first, Mom," Sarah would say every time Isabella brought up the subject. "We'll find another way." But as the days passed, that other way seemed increasingly distant. Eleanor, true to her word, had spoken with her brother, but so far no concrete opportunity had arisen. It was in the midst of this growing desperation that something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while Sarah was reviewing the job listings in the local newspaper for the umpteenth time, the phone rang. "Hello?" Sarah answered without much expectation. "Am I speaking with Sarah Mendoza?" asked a male voice on the other end of the line. "Yes, this is she," Sarah replied, intrigued by the formal tone of the voice. "My name is David Vasquez," the man continued. "I'd like to speak with you about an important matter. Would it be possible for us to meet in person?" Sarah hesitated for a moment. She didn't know any David Vasquez, and the idea of meeting a stranger made her nervous. However, her desperate situation made her consider the proposal. Can you tell me what this is about? She asked cautiously. There was a pause on the other end of the line before David responded. I'd prefer to discuss it in person, if you don't mind. I assure you it's something that will greatly interest you. Do you know the cafe on the corner? Sarah knew the place well. It was a small cafe a few blocks from her house, always full of people and with a cozy atmosphere. Yes, I know it, she replied. Excellent, said David. Could we meet there tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Sarah thought about it for a moment. Her curiosity and her need for a change in her luck finally won over her caution. All right, she agreed. I'll be there. Perfect, said David, and Sarah could detect a tone of relief in his voice. I'll see you tomorrow, Sarah, and thank you for agreeing to meet with me. After hanging up, Sarah stared at the phone, wondering what she had gotten herself into. When she told Lucy and Isabella about the mysterious call, both expressed their concern. Mom, are you sure this is a good idea? Lucy asked, frowning. It could be dangerous. Your daughter is right, Sarah, Isabella added. We don't know who this man is or what he wants. Sarah understood their concerns, but something inside told her she should go to this meeting. I'll be fine, she assured them. We're meeting in a public place, and if anything seems suspicious, I'll leave immediately. The next morning, Sarah dressed carefully, choosing a sky blue blouse that Lucy always said looked good on her, and black pants. She wanted to make a good impression, although she wasn't sure why it was so important. When she arrived at the cafe on the corner, she paused for a moment before entering, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and sweet bread greeted her as she opened the door. She looked around, searching for someone who might be David Vasquez. Her eyes fell on a middle-aged man sitting alone at a table in the back. When their eyes met, the man smiled and stood up, gesturing for her to approach. Sarah Mendoza? He asked as she reached the table. Yes, Sarah replied, studying the man before her. David Vasquez appeared to be about 45, with dark hair sprinkled with grey and kind eyes behind thin-framed glasses. He wore a casual but well-tailored suit. I'm David Vasquez, he introduced himself, extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. Sarah shook his hand and sat down, still intrigued and a little nervous. Mr. Vasquez, what is this all about? David smiled, a gesture that seemed to mix gratitude and something Sarah couldn't identify. Nostalgia? Perhaps. Of course, said David. But first, would you mind if we ordered something? It's on me. Sarah accepted, and soon they had 2 steaming cups of coffee and a plate of sweet bread in front of them. David took a sip of his coffee before speaking. Sarah, do you remember an older man you helped at the gas station a few weeks ago? A man who couldn't pay for his gas? Sarah felt her heart race. How did this man know about that? Yes, she replied cautiously. I remember. David nodded as if confirming something to himself. That man was my father, Luke Vasquez. Sarah was speechless for a moment, processing this information. Your father? But how? My father has Alzheimer's, David explained, his voice tinged with sadness. That day he had escaped from home when we finally found him. He couldn't stop talking about an angel named Sarah who had helped him at the gas station. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. I just did what I thought was right. David looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. What you did was more than right, Sarah. It was an extraordinary act of kindness, and that's why I'm here today. Sarah waited, feeling she was about to hear something important. David continued. You see, Sarah, there's something I haven't told you yet. I'm the owner of that gas station. The surprise almost made Sarah spill her coffee. You're the owner? But then... Yes, David nodded. I know everything that happened that day, and the days after I know you were fired for helping my father. Sarah felt a mix of emotions. Confusion, surprise, and a glimmer of hope she didn't dare nurture. Mr. Vasquez, David raised a hand to stop her. Please call me David, and let me finish. When I found out what had happened, I felt terrible. Not only because of the injustice of your dismissal, but because my own company had punished such a pure act of kindness. He paused, taking another sip of his coffee before continuing. I've spent the last few weeks investigating, talking to your former co-workers, to the manager. Everyone speaks wonders of you, Sarah. Of your work ethic, your kindness, your dedication. Sarah blushed at the compliments, not knowing what to say. And that's why, David continued, leaning forward, I want to offer you something. I want to offer you the position of general manager of the gas station. Sarah was left open-mouthed, sure she had heard wrong. What? But how? I don't have experience as a manager. David smiled. You have something much more valuable than experience, Sarah. You have integrity, compassion, and a big heart. Those are the qualities I look for in someone to run my business. Sarah felt her head spinning. It was too good to be true. But what about the current manager? What about Arnold? David's expression hardened slightly. Arnold will be reassigned to another of our branches. His handling of your situation showed me that he doesn't share the values I want for my company. Sarah remained silent for a moment, trying to process everything she was hearing. It was as if the universe had decided to reward her act of kindness in the most unexpected way possible. I don't know what to say, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. David smiled kindly. You don't have to decide right now. I understand it's an unexpected offer and a big change. Take a couple of days to think about it. Here's my card, he said, sliding a business card across the table. Call me when you've made a decision. Sarah took the card with trembling hands, still unable to believe what was happening. Thank you, she managed to say. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll think about it carefully. David nodded, standing up. It's the least I can do after what you did for my father and Sarah, he added, his voice full of sincerity. Regardless of your decision, I want you to know that people like you make the world a better place. With those words, David said goodbye and left the cafe, leaving Sarah sitting there, looking at the card in her hands and feeling as if she had just woken up from a dream. When she finally got up to leave, Sarah felt as if she were floating. She walked back home in a daze, trying to process everything that had happened. Upon arriving home, she found Lucy and Isabella anxiously waiting for her in the living room. "Mom!" Lucy exclaimed, running towards her. "How did it go? Who was that man? Are you okay?" Isabella approached more slowly, leaning on her cane but with the same expression of concern and curiosity on her face. Sarah collapsed onto the sofa, suddenly feeling exhausted but euphoric. "Sit down," she told them. "I have something incredible to tell you." For the next hour, Sarah recounted everything that had happened at the cafe. She told them about David, about his father Luke, and about the surprising job offer. Lucy and Isabella listened with increasingly wide eyes, occasionally interrupting with exclamations of amazement. When Sarah finished her story, there was a moment of stunned silence before Lucy jumped from her seat. "Mom, this is incredible!" she shouted, hugging Sarah. "You have to accept." Isabella, calmer but with eyes shining with emotion, nodded. "Sarah, my girl, this is a wonderful opportunity. It's as if the universe is giving back. Your kindness multiplied by 1,000. Sarah smiled, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I know, it's incredible. But what if I'm not up to it? I've never been a manager before." "Nonsense," Isabella said firmly. "You're intelligent, hard-working, and you have a heart of gold. That's more valuable than any experience. Besides," Lucy added, "this David believes in you. He knows the business, and he's choosing you." Sarah looked at her daughter and her mother, feeling overwhelmed by their support and confidence. "You're right," she finally said. I'm going to give my best in this new challenge." That night, after dinner and receiving more words of encouragement from her family, Sarah sat on her bed with the phone in her hand and David's card in front of her. She took a deep breath and dialed the number. David answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Hello." "David," Sarah said, surprised by the firmness of her own voice. "It's Sarah Mendoza. I've made a decision. I accept your offer." She could hear the smile in David's voice when he responded. "Excellent news, Sarah. You won't regret it. How about we meet tomorrow to discuss the details?" After agreeing on the time and place of the meeting, Sarah hung up the phone, feeling both nervous and excited. She knew she had a big challenge ahead of her, but she also felt she was on the right path. As she prepared for bed, Sarah thought about how a simple act of kindness had triggered a series of events that had changed her life. She fell asleep with a smile on her lips, eager to see what the future would bring. What Sarah didn't know was that her adventure was just beginning, and that her new job would bring challenges and surprises she could never have imagined. The next morning dawned, bright and clear, as if the sky itself wanted to celebrate Sarah's new beginning. She dressed carefully, choosing a suit she had saved for special occasions. As she looked in the mirror, adjusting her necklace, she couldn't help but smile. It was as if she were seeing a new version of herself, a more confident Sarah, full of possibilities. Lucy entered the room, already dressed for school. "Are you ready, Mom?" she asked with a proud smile. Sarah nodded, taking a deep breath. "As ready as I can be," she replied. In the kitchen, Isabella had already prepared breakfast. "Eat well, my girl," she said, serving a generous portion of scrambled eggs. "You'll need energy for your big day." As they ate breakfast, the family chatted animatedly about the possibilities opening up before them. The atmosphere was electric, full of hope and expectation. "Remember," Isabella said as Sarah prepared, "to leave. You're capable of anything you set your mind to. Go and show them what you're made of." With a final hug for her mother and daughter, Sarah left the house ready to face her new challenge. The meeting with David was scheduled at the company's central offices, a modern building in the city center. When Sarah entered the lobby, she felt momentarily overwhelmed by the grandeur of the place. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she deserved to be there. David greeted her warmly, leading her to a spacious office that looked more like a conference room with views of the city. "Welcome, Sarah," he said, indicating for her to take a seat. "I'm delighted that you've accepted our offer." Over the next few hours, David explained in detail her new responsibilities. As general manager, Sarah listened attentively, taking notes and asking questions. As the conversation progressed, she realized that although the job would be challenging, she was more than prepared to take it on. "There's one more thing you should know," David said towards the end of the meeting, his tone becoming more serious. "As I mentioned, my father has Alzheimer's. His condition has worsened in recent months, and sometimes he escapes from home." Sarah nodded, remembering her encounter with Luke. "I'd like to ask you a personal favor," David continued. "If you ever see my father at the gas station, or if you hear that someone has seen him, could you call me immediately? Here's my personal number," he said, writing a number on a piece of paper. "Of course," Sarah replied without hesitation. "I'll do everything I can to help." David smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Sarah. I knew I could count on you." When the meeting ended, Sarah left the building feeling excited and a little overwhelmed. She had a lot to learn, but she was ready for the challenge. The following days passed in a whirlwind of activity. Sarah immersed herself in her new role with enthusiasm, quickly learning the ins and outs of the business. Her compassionate approach and unwavering work ethic soon earned her the respect of her employees. However, not everything was easy. Some of her former co-workers, especially Carl, seemed resentful of her sudden promotion. Sarah had to carefully navigate these tensions, balancing authority with empathy. One afternoon, a week after starting her new job, Sarah was in her office reviewing the monthly reports when Martha, now her assistant, rushed in breathlessly. "Sarah," Martha said out of breath, "there's an elderly man in the store who's causing problems. I think it might be Mr. Vasquez's father." Sarah stood up immediately. "Thank you, Martha, I'll handle this." When she reached the store, she saw Luke agitated, arguing with a customer. The old man seemed confused and distressed. "This is my gas station," Luke was shouting. "You can't throw me out of here." Sarah approached calmly, her heart beating rapidly. "Mr. Luke," she said softly, "do you remember me?" "I'm Sarah." Luke looked at her, confusion evident in his eyes. For a moment he seemed not to recognize her, but then his face lit up. "Sarah, the angel from the gas station." Sarah smiled, relieved. "That's right, Mr. Luke. Why don't you come with me? We can have a coffee and chat for a while." With care and patience, Sarah managed to calm Luke and lead him to her office. While Martha brought them coffee, Sarah discreetly called David. "David, it's Sarah," she said quietly, while Luke looked out the window. "Your father is here at the gas station. He's safe, but I think you should come pick him up." "I'm on my way," David replied, the worry evident in his voice. "Thank you, Sarah." For the next hour, Sarah kept Luke calm and entertained, listening to his stories about his gas station and nodding understandingly. Although many of his words were confusing, Sarah could see glimpses of the man he once was, a passionate businessman and a loving father. When David arrived, panting and with his face full of concern, he found his father laughing with Sarah about an anecdote from his days as the gas station owner. "David," Luke exclaimed upon seeing his son, "look who's here! It's Sarah, the angel from the gas station. I hired her to run the business." David looked at Sarah gratefully. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. "Dad," David said aloud, "it's time to go home. Mom is waiting for us for dinner." Luke frowned for a moment, but then smiled. "Oh yes, your mother always gets angry if we're late for dinner. It was a pleasure to see you, Sarah. Take good care of my gas station." Sarah nodded, moved. "I will, Mr. Luke. You can count on it." As David helped his father out, he paused for a moment. "Sarah, I don't know how to thank you. You handled this incredibly well." Sarah smiled. "There's nothing to thank me for, David. I'm glad I could help." After they left, Sarah remained in her office for a moment, reflecting on what had happened. This incident had reminded her why she was there, why this job was more than just a job. It was an opportunity to make a difference, to show compassion in a world that often seemed to lack it. The following days brought new challenges. Sarah had to deal with disgruntled employees, difficult customers, and the intricate details of managing a business. But she faced each obstacle with the same determination and compassion she had shown that day with Luke. One afternoon as she was closing the office, Carl approached her. He had been one of her harshest critics since her promotion, and Sarah braced herself for another confrontation. "Sarah," Carl began, his voice unusually soft, "I wanted to apologize." Sarah looked at him, surprised. "Apologize?" Carl nodded, clearly uncomfortable. "Yes, I've been unfair to you. I was jealous of your promotion, and well, I was wrong. I saw how you handled the situation with Mr. Vasquez the other day. It was impressive." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Carl. That means a lot to me." "You're a good boss, Sarah," Carl continued, "and you were right that day when you helped that old man. Sometimes doing the right thing is more important than following the rules to the letter." With those words, Carl left, leaving Sarah moved and reflective. She had faced many challenges in the past few weeks, but moments like this reminded her that she was on the right path. That night, as she had dinner with Lucy and Isabella, Sarah told them about her day and about Carl's apology. "See, Mom," Lucy said with a proud smile, "you're showing everyone how amazing you are." Isabella nodded, her eyes shining. "I always knew you would do great things, my girl. I'm so proud of you." Sarah looked at her family, feeling a wave of gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said. "Your support means everything to me." As she prepared for bed that night, Sarah reflected on how her life had changed in such a short time. From being on the brink of unemployment and desperation, she was now in a position where she could make a real difference in people's lives. But as she fell asleep, Sarah couldn't know that her greatest challenge was yet to come, a challenge that would test everything she had learned and that would change the course of her life once again. Months passed, and Sarah established herself in her role as general manager. Under her leadership, the gas station thrived. She implemented new customer-focused policies, improved working conditions for employees, and optimized operations. Revenues increased, and staff morale was at an all-time high. However, as the anniversary of her first year in the position approached, a series of events began to unfold that would threaten everything Sarah had worked so hard for. It all started one Friday afternoon when Sarah received an urgent call from David. "Sarah," David's voice sounded tense, "I need you to come to the central office immediately. A complicated situation has arisen." Intrigued and a little worried, Sarah headed to the central office. When she arrived, she found David pacing nervously in his office. "What's going on, David?" Sarah asked, concern evident. In her voice, David stopped and looked at her with a mixture of fear and determination. "Sarah, the company is in trouble. Serious trouble." For the next hour, David explained the situation. An internal audit had revealed significant financial irregularities dating back several years, long before Sarah joined the company. Apparently, the former CFO had been embezzling funds and falsifying reports. "If this comes to light," David said, running a hand through his hair in frustration, "it could be the end of the company. Hundreds of people would lose their jobs." Sarah sat down, feeling as if the floor was moving beneath her feet. "What can we do?" David looked at her, and Sarah saw an internal struggle in his eyes. I have a proposal, but I'm not sure it's the right thing to do." With growing unease, Sarah listened as David explained his plan. He wanted Sarah to help cover up the irregularities, at least temporarily, while they worked to rectify the situation internally. "I know it's a lot to ask," David said, his voice almost pleading, "but think of all the employees, their families. If the company falls, everyone will suffer." Sarah remained silent for a long moment, her mind spinning. On one hand, she understood David's concern for the employees. She herself had grown fond of many of them, and the idea of them losing their jobs broke her heart. Plus, she owed David a lot. He had given her a second chance when she needed it most. But on the other hand, the idea of participating in a cover-up went against everything she believed in. Wasn't this exactly the kind of unethical behavior she had sworn to combat? "David," Sarah finally said, her voice shaky but firm, "I understand your concern, I really do, but I can't be part of this. It's not right." David looked at her, a mixture of disappointment and respect in his eyes. "I understand, Sarah, and part of me knew you would say that. It's one of the reasons I respect you so much." Sarah stood up, feeling emotionally exhausted. "There has to be another way, David, a way to face this head-on with honesty. Maybe if we're transparent about what's happened and show a clear plan to rectify it, we can save the company without compromising our integrity." David nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. I need time to think about this. Please don't tell anyone about this conversation for now." Sarah agreed and left, her mind still reeling with the implications of what she had just discovered. As she drove back home, she realized she was at a crossroads. The decisions she would make in the coming days would not only affect her career but the lives of hundreds of people. That night, Sarah could barely sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, weighing her options, desperately searching for a solution that could save the company without compromising her ethics. What Sarah didn't know was that her conversation with David had been just the beginning. In the coming days, she would be embroiled in a storm of events that would test her integrity, compassion, and determination like never before. As the sun rose, marking the beginning of a new day, Sarah got up, exhausted but resolved. She knew she had the biggest challenge of her life ahead of her, but she was determined to face it with the same kindness and strength that had brought her this far. What she couldn't imagine was how her decisions in the coming days would not only change her life, but would have an impact that would extend far beyond the gas station and her small community. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult decisions for Sarah. On one hand, she felt a deep loyalty to David and the company that had given her a second chance. On the other, her sense of ethics and integrity prevented her from being part of any kind of cover-up. After nights of insomnia and long conversations with Isabella and Lucy, Sarah made a decision. She couldn't stay silent, but she also didn't want to cause unnecessary harm to the company and its employees. With determination, Sarah set up a meeting with David. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation," Sarah began, her voice firm but kind, "and I think I have a proposal." David looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "I'm listening." "I propose that we be completely transparent," Sarah said. "Let's reveal the irregularities ourselves before anyone else does. Let's show a detailed plan of how we're going to rectify the situation and compensate any affected parties. Let's implement new controls and policies to ensure this never happens again." David listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When Sarah finished, there was a long moment of silence. "It's risky," David finally said. "We could lose everything, or we could gain something much more valuable," Sarah responded. "Trust, integrity, the opportunity to prove that we're a company that does the right thing even when it's difficult." After what seemed like an eternity, David nodded slowly. "You're right, Sarah, you've always been right, let's do it." The following days were a frenzy of activity. Sarah worked tirelessly with David and a team of lawyers and accountants to prepare a comprehensive statement and action plan. When everything was ready, they called a press conference. On the day of the conference, Sarah stood next to David in front of a room full of anxious journalists and employees. With a clear and firm voice, David revealed the financial irregularities and presented their plan to correct them. "And now," David said, "I'd like to introduce you to the person who inspired us to take this difficult but necessary step, Sarah Mendoza, our general manager." Sarah stepped forward, her heart pounding but her resolution unwavering. She spoke about the importance of integrity in business, about how an act of kindness can trigger positive change, and about the vision of a company that not only seeks economic benefit, but also the well-being of its employees and the community. The initial reaction was mixed. There was outrage over the irregularities, but also respect for the transparency and action plan. The following days were tense, with the company under intense scrutiny, but something unexpected began to happen. Customers and suppliers, impressed by the company's honesty, renewed their contracts. Employees, inspired by Sarah's ethical leadership, redoubled their efforts. The local community rallied in support of the company that had chosen to do the right thing. Weeks after the press conference, Sarah was in her office when she received a call. It was a journalist from a major national newspaper. "Mrs. Mendoza," the journalist said, "we're doing a report on business ethics, and your case has caught our attention. Could you tell us more about what led you to make this decision?" Sarah smiled, remembering that day at the gas station when she helped a confused old man. "It all started with a simple act of kindness," she began to tell. For the next hour, Sarah recounted her story to the journalist, from her initial dismissal to her promotion as general manager, and finally the difficult decision to reveal the financial irregularities. She spoke passionately about the importance of integrity in business and how a small act of compassion can trigger positive change on a large scale. When the interview ended, the journalist was visibly moved. "Mrs. Mendoza, your story is inspiring. I think many people will feel motivated by your example." Days later, when the article was published, the response was overwhelming. Sarah's story went viral, inspiring debates about business ethics across the country. Soon, invitations began to arrive for her to give talks at universities and business conferences. In the midst of all this, Sarah never forgot her roots. She continued to manage the gas station with the same compassion and dedication as always. She implemented ethics training programs for all employees and established an assistance fund for customers in difficult situations, inspired by her experience with Luke. One day, while Sarah was at the gas station overseeing a new customer service initiative, she saw a familiar car park. It was David, and to her surprise, he was accompanied by his father, Luke. "Sarah!" Luke exclaimed upon seeing her, his face lighting up with recognition. Sarah approached, moved. "Mr. Luke, it's a pleasure to see you. How are you?" "I'm fine, thanks to you," Luke replied, taking Sarah's hands in his. "David has told me everything you've done. I always knew you were special." David smiled, his eyes shining with emotion. "Dad insisted on coming to see you. He wanted to personally thank you for saving the company he built." Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. "You have nothing to thank me for. I just did what I thought was right." "And that," David said, "is exactly why we're grateful. Your integrity not only saved the company, Sarah, it's given us a new purpose, a new way of doing business." As they chatted, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how a simple act of kindness had triggered a series of events that had changed so many lives, including her own. That night, back at home, Sarah shared what had happened with Lucy and Isabella during dinner. "I'm so proud of you, Mum," Lucy said, her eyes shining with admiration. "You've changed so many lives for the better." Isabella nodded, taking her daughter's hand. "I always knew you were destined for great things, my girl. Your kind heart is your greatest strength." Sarah looked at her family, feeling deep gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support," she said. "You are my strength." As she prepared for bed that night, Sarah reflected on her journey from being a simple gas station employee to becoming an example of ethical leadership at the national level. But what filled her with the most pride wasn't the recognition or professional success, but knowing that she had maintained her integrity and had inspired others to do the same. She realized that her story wasn't just about her. It was a testimony to the power of kindness, of how a small act of compassion can create ripples that extend far beyond what we can imagine. As she closed her eyes, Sarah smiled. She didn't know what the future held for her, but she was sure of one thing. She would continue to face each challenge with the same compassion and determination that had brought her this far. Because in the end, she understood, it's our actions that define who we are and the impact we have on the world. And so with a heart full of gratitude and hope, Sarah fell asleep ready to face whatever new chapter life had in store for her.